In Ireland's heartlands, surrounded by patchwork fields and distant bogs, the Westmeath town of Moate seems to have been at a confluence of journeys through the centuries. From the Esker ridges that were once ancient roads for pilgrims going towards the likes of Clonmacnoise, to the modern traveller on the road from Dublin to Galway.
Moate began, I suppose, to be important as a trade route from east to west, because it's built between two eskers beside one another, going from east to west, and it was a pathway. But then nobody seemed to stay much.
Quieter these days due to a bypass, the town is still a bustling centre, where local historian and priest Father Jimmy takes us on a walk through history. Father Jimmy first turns off Main Street down a lane, where you get to see one of the oldest visible remains around the town. A large mounded fortification known as Moate Bailey.
Built by the Anglo-Normans, well, they say the Chute branch of them, built that about 1198. It'd be about 16 metres to the Bailey, and 9 more, the Moate would be that bit higher. Now, that was built on a natural mound, a spur of the Esker. So it wouldn't have been that big a job. There'd be a lot of work on it, but there was a natural mound there that they built it. Moate then got his name from that, but it got Moate Grania from a young girl from Munster who married one of the O'Mallochlins. The story is that she took upon herself the job of brehv or judge. She'd go up there and sit and hear cases and pass judgments. So it was called the Moate or Moate of Grania Og. No, I have a memory, and I could be wrong, that this was known as Castle Street. Yeah. Yeah. Castle Street, yeah.
So it was from Courthouse down.
Yeah. The castle would have been built by the O'Mallochlins in the early 1700s, and then in 1603 the Dillons bought it. They would be Anglo-Norman family from down Drumraney way, and after the Cromwellian settlement, they lost it with the Cromwellian settlement, and a soldier called Humphreys got it. He wanted to go home, and he sold it to John Clibborn. So it's one of the oldest dwelling places it is in the town. Yeah.
Moate is located in the barony of Clonlonan, and these lands were
set aside to pay the arrears of the disbanded Cromwellian soldiers. The rate of exchange in these baronies was 10 acres for each £6 of arrears.
In 1655, a Colonel John Clibborn was granted lands in Coolleen near Moate. He then bought Moate property including Moate Castle in 1656. The castle would go on to be a centre of a new faith that would change the area forever. A recent convert to Quakerism, John's new home of Moate Castle would become the meeting house of the Quakers in the area.
And it was a sort of a religion that unified them all, because they hadn't a lot in common. A lot of those settlers, whether it be the soldiers or adventurers, people who gave money for the war.
A retrospective in the Ballymena Weekly Telegraph in 1914 tells a story of a possible origin of the Quaker conversion.
One of the former occupants of the castle was Colonel Clibborn, a celebrated character in the 17th century. It was related of him that on one occasion a Quaker lady was preaching in a barn in the vicinity of Moate. He was so indignant that he determined to clear out the ranter, but so impressed was he with the message of the lady that both he and his sister were converted, and from that time on the Clibborns have almost all been members of the Society of Friends.
This was the old roadway to Moate, and this therefore was the front of the house. And at the front of the house we have a shield and a gig. There it is, right over the door there. Sheila and a gig they're called, but it could be called Sheila in a gig, Sheila on her hunkers, or Sheila in a gib, Sheila of the breast. But they were generally naked exhibitionist women, and regarded, strangely enough, as being able to ward off evil or warning people of the evils of sin. That's why we're all so good around Moate. That up there is the Quaker cemetery. Now it's gone very neglected. As I said, we did clean it up for the big occasion when we had a meeting of the Quakers of Ireland, or a lot of them, in the year 2000. And there are, as I said, the first burials will be in 1660s, but there was no headstone put up till the 1800s.
Now we have explored that cemetery. There are 45 headstones, but there are a lot more people buried there. And all those headstones are interesting. They're all 2 foot by 3 because they believed everybody is equal in death, you know. And we had a big meeting of the Quakers some years ago here, and we cleared it up. It could do with the cleaning up again.
All the Quakers, there's no Quaker present here now. No. Well, it is a pity, because in the 1798 rebellion, the Quakers did not take part. Any of them who came Church of England would have, but the Quakers as such, and anywhere in Ireland, they were pacifists. They didn't take part, and were horrified by what took place in 1798, both sides, you know, horrified. This is obviously the new headstone here, and it's in keeping with the old ones. He'd be the last one of the last of the Cliburns of Moate here. No, they didn't know much about him.
In 1659, the townland was recorded as containing a population of only 23 adults, of whom 18 were Irish.
Well, I would presume that, you see, Moate wasn't a town till the 1700s, till they started building up the industry, the Quaker industry. It was 1733 before the first industry was established, and that was the flour and oaten meal mill. That is still there. Opposite then there was the tannery, and you can understand that the basic needs of food, flour and meal. Then there were horses that need harness, there were people that needed shoes, so tannery wouldn't have been unusual to have. There were tanneries around, and again all of that was a response to the local farming situation, where you had oats and wheat and barley and flax and so many other stuff. They were the raw material for a lot of the industries that the Quakers set up.
Not too many has them ones.
No. Whose house is that? Oh, that's the forge.
Forge, yeah. That's there.
That's the old forge that was there.
Yeah.
Forge that was there. And I will sell shoe and an ass. Yeah, and 90.
Well, you hold that, and the women may want to take a copy.
I'll take a copy of it and give it back to you.
Right.
We'll do that. Thanks a
Where's
million.
that exactly
Thanks
now?
a million. Pardon?
Where them cars were parked?
Yeah, where them cars were
gone
stopped
now.
was Lynham's Forge. Yeah.
I remember it myself.
That was Cliburn's house then. The Cliburns built that house. No, I think it was around 1670s, around that.
1670, something over the door. Right?
Yeah. And very well kept, and it's been lived in by the family up to now, you know. Yeah, it is a fine old bit. Pity now to see nobody there.
It is.
Terrible pity. I don't know who will inherit that now.
But this guy,
There is a relation. Yeah, because there's occasionally you see a car there. So, Andy, how is life? We were. Sean was putting a bit. We're having a look at it. Yeah, we were. We're in business here now. We're being filmed.
The next moment that puts Moate on the Irish history map is in 1798, and after the invasion of the French and General Humbert into Ireland. After a disastrous campaign and French defeat at Ballinamuck by the new Viceroy Cornwallis, the triumphant army trailing its hapless prisoners was forced to go into camp by Moate as the horses were used up and had to be put out to grass. Their visit would leave a lasting mark on the town's history.
At Campfield itself, they had a lot of the soldiers were there, the ordinary soldiers, and they had the prisoners. Now, there weren't many prisoners. There were 3 or 4 Irish prisoners of war. They would be regarded as traitors, and they were being brought to Dublin to be executed. The French prisoners, they would have been regarded as prisoners of war, and they would be finally be released. Now, the place is called Campfield because of their camping there. It's also a number of soldiers on both sides died from injuries there, and we're told that they were buried in that area here.
And they took over a number of houses, of course, in Moate now, down in the Carmelite Church. They took over it for their horses and stuff like that. And we have just a big house up here on the right, bluish colour there. They were there, the officers and all were there, Mrs. Rowan's house.
Moate, meanwhile, was growing due to the influence of the industrial actions of the Quaker community. Generally, wherever they went, the Friendly Brethren generated substantial industrial activity and wealth, largely in the milling and textile sectors.
Clibborn set up a lot of industries in town. They said most of those industries were down in the new town in Moate, the far side.
This is the new town area here. 1750 to 1850, it was known as free market. It was free because they had no tolls to pay coming into it. So they avoided the toll the tolls coming in, and they had the market here. It was also a place where the Quakers had a lot of their industries. They had the woolen mill here. That was burned down in 1859 with a loss of a lot of jobs and a lot of poverty afterwards. And there was the linen mill here. There was a tweed here. They had a variety of factories. They had felt here. Yeah.
Out in Hall there, Clibborns found soil that was suitable for making bricks and tiles. And so that became an industry out there. And then out of the wool, there was a variety of small industries set up all around the new town, which gave huge employment to a lot of people.
Out the Ballymore Road about further, there was the brewery, and there were some out that road, because we found, when Martin Keenan came to me when they were doing the sewerage, they found a tunnel going from one side of the road to the other. We don't know what factories they were connecting, but it was perfect, and it was built in the 1800s for horses and carts going over it, and lorries and all never moved. Yeah.
That was an old sawmill there.
That's right, and that was the Wesleyan church there. John Wesley came here. And that's the Carmelite church up there. That was opened in 1868, and they had no spire, so they went to the Argentine. A lot of Irish, Father MacDonald went there. He worked with the Irish, and he got money to build the spire. A lot of the Irish from Westmeath, Longford and Wexford, they went to the Argentine. So God bless them, they didn't know where they were going, but yeah. But weren't the great men that time to cut that stone? When you look at the railway bridges, the stone work on that, and lifting those without anything really.
No. I hated that steeple and all the work.
Amazing.
The 1841 census lists the various occupations of 800 families in Moate as
192 families engaged in agriculture, 200 depended on direction of labour and 150 depended on own manual labour.
By the 1850s, the progress of the town towards being regarded as a market and fairs centre was well established. From the Dukas collection in the 1930s comes a memory from a Margaret Connaughton.
The local fairs in this country are held in Athlone, Ballymahon, Moate and Ballymore. The buyers often go to the house of a farmer before a fair to buy the animals, but this is not done nowadays. People pay tolls on the cattle they buy or sell at the Green Gate. The toll is 4p on cattle, 3p on sheep. This money is given for the cleaning of the streets and fair greens. Luck money is also given to people who buy or sell animals. 2 and 6p per head is the amount usually given. The animals are marked when bought, either with a scissors or a rattle.
All the old fairs, I remember the fairs in town, and they were in the town, of course. You can imagine stay at the town after a fair. Every month there was a fair, and they sold everything, and mostly cattle, and there'd be horses and pigs as well. Yeah. Oh, it was a busy little town. Yes, it was. Yeah, and it was a fine town at one stage, and you often wonder who decided the width of the streets, because when you see it, it's well laid out, really, you know. And of course, I suppose one of the big industries became a brewery, and the brewery was down the far side of the town, and there was distilling up this side of the town. So Adamsons were involved in the brewery, and one of the oldest houses in 1793 is still standing down there, a big 3-story, 4-story house. That was Adamsons.
We go down now as far as the Courthouse. That replaced the old sessions and jail that was in the new town. That was built in 1833, and the jail at the back of that was built 1835. That has had many functions after that. It served as a courthouse, it served as a social hall, and it serves as a library. It's a library now again. Yeah. 2-story, 3 facades in the front. And then there was living quarters underneath. There were people lived there. I remember people lived there. Christine Mullins lived there. Yeah. This is, an interesting one. James Tormey, a young lad who, like so many others, joined the First World War, joined the British Army, and fought in France and in the Dardanelles. When the army then in 1919, when they let all those lads home, he worked first at Athlone at the railway, and then he joined the National Army. And during the split, the Civil War, he was shot.
And then we had the National Bank. Now we know where it was, and Daniel O'Connell came down in 1834 to open that bank, and so they had a big reception for Daniel O'Connell here. Yeah, opposite the courthouse, the National Bank was.
A young Moate solicitor named Patrick Egan, son of James Egan, read an address to O'Connell on behalf of the gentlemen of the town and district, while banners of welcome spanned the street.
And in fact, in those banks, they tell me at that time, O'Connell's photograph was in them all, and he got a huge reception there at that time, an enormous reception. And the purpose of the bank was to facilitate people in developing projects that they could get money for themselves, the Irish people.
the first church here, this is part of it here, the church was there, and the first Catholic church, and there the entrance had to be at the back, you see. Opposite, they had what they called the hanging wall. So any fellow who was hung during the week was hung up there as a visual aid for when they're coming out from Mass. There's a warning that there must be it, and so no sheep stealing and things like that, you know. Yeah, they're like that, yeah.
This church was built in, opened in 1868. That was St. Patrick's Church. That was built, it's always referred to as the Green, because it was built on the Fair Green.
Well, sure, it was condemned at that stage, you know, the penal laws. It was really not till Daniel O'Connor's Catholic Emancipation, 1829, that they were building churches, you know, and then they went to town. They made up for lost time with huge works to build, you know. It was a concession because they had it here before the Church of Ireland then wasn't until about 20 years later up above St. Mary's.
Canon Pinkman, I remember Canon Pinkman getting up one morning, one Sunday, and we were after doing a bit of damage. It was Halloween.
Yeah.
And we're in, and he said that he looked down at the church, you see, and there were so many complaints about things that were done, and they were minor, lifting gates and stuff. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, and the rest of you." And my father says, "Was that applying to you?" Yeah. Yeah.
The coming of the Midlands Great Western Railway would sound the death knell to the coach and horses which plied the main route from Dublin to Galway, and used Moate as a way station on the long journey across the island.
What happened at the end to the industries? Well, the Industrial Revolution didn't help. The coming of railways was a plus and a minus because it was easier to bring in that raw material and the end product from other places. So that, and then of course the famine. But the last industry to die was probably the woolen mills in 1856. That was burnt down, and there was over 200 people working there. The linen mill, that was burnt down the night of the big wind, January 1839. A lot of the town was burnt down at that night, and that industry was burned down. And it's interesting, you have a windmill road here at the back, so you can presume that a lot of those industries, the source of power came from windmills in the area. Not every place was called after them, but you can imagine that was one of the only sources of power they had, besides a river that was down at the first mill and the tan yard. The river is still there.
Freeman's Journal, 1913. On a journey to Athlone, as the editor passed through Moate, he mused, "At present it is a neat and pretty place, as all towns in Ireland." He continued, "It has also had its day of great Quaker prosperity, which is, I fear, passing away, for the manufacture of linen and cotton, which these good people encouraged, and which they upheld probably longer than any other class of employers, are now undersold and almost ruined by the overwhelming power of British industry."
That road there we call the Station Road now, because the station opened up in 1852, and that was the old road out to Ballymore, and it also was part of the junction of the Dublin Road. The Dublin Road came out down through, it followed the Eskers, down through Rosemount and into the town, and that's why again Moate was sort of important before it became an industrial area.
Unfortunately, the local train station would not last, and the line and the station would eventually close in 1987, Today the abandoned line has found a new life as a well-loved and used walking greenway, which is an example of the town's resilience in the face of change. And resilience is something many towns need today, although Moate is still buzzing and busy. Whether as a satellite of Athlone as it grows, or distant Dublin, the town can still draw on its amenities, with leisure centre and heritage park and many pubs and a hotel, or just enjoy the wide open town at peace with its history and busy creating a new one.